Welcome to episode 46 of Talking Prisoner. Our special guest with us today is an author, actress, voiceover artist, and a counsellor. She's appeared in many Australian classic TV shows and movies, including 1,000 Skies, Return to Eden, Prisoner, Raw Silk, The Flying Doctors, Cluedo, Acropolis Now, GP, The Secret Life of Us, MDS, Blue Healers, Paper Giants, and Winners and Losers. Our guest also played two parts in Prisoner. She played Doris Cruickshank in 1984 and Lisa Mullins in 1986. Welcome to Talking Prisoner. It's such a pleasure to have you on, Nicki. Good morning, Ken.
Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and quite amazing to hear all that CV rattled off like that.
And there's a lot more, actually. I just... And the fans are actually all very surprised that you played two roles. They all forgot about the very first role in '84.
Yeah, I could easily have forgotten about it too. That was my first year out of drama school.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was pretty exciting. In fact, I think it may have been my first role, aside from a television commercial.
Oh, amazing. Before we get into your career, can we just learn a little about your life growing up as a child? Where did you grow up?
Sure. I grew up on the black soil plains of the Darling Downs in Queensland on a farm. Oh. And when I was pretty young, 8 years old, we moved into Toowoomba in Queensland, where I went to a school that only had girls at it, which was a bit weird. But yeah, now the Darling Downs, of course, is where they are fracking, because underneath the black soil is coal and gas.
Wow. What was it like living on a farm? Was it fun?
Oh, it was wonderful. And, the old saying about you can take the girl out of the country, but whatever. Yeah, that's pretty true. That's pretty true. I've always been split between country and city, and because I'm a big city girl, but I really like to have the space of the country around me, frequently.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Can you tell us about your school days, and did you have a favourite subject or an unfavourite subject?
Yeah, my unfavourite subject was definitely maths. Yeah, like a lot of creatives, I'm pretty slanted towards the right brain. But nevertheless, I've, struggled through. I can manage with finances and whatnot. Yeah. But yeah, I tended to be good at all the art subjects, English and, history, loved ancient history, and actually did that when I left school. I went to uni before I went to drama school, and ancient history was one of my subjects.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I wasn't really into sport. I was more into kind of gymnastics, ballet, jazz ballet, yoga, all the bendy kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And when did your interest in acting begin?
Oh, definitely began at school. So yeah, from primary school. When I was very young, we used to attend church every week, of course, drive into the little township and go to church like everybody else. And I used to sing my lungs out when we were singing hymns. So we found that when I was at school that I was okay at singing. So my first experience of acting was as a very young person doing musicals, which included singing.
Oh, wow.
And I always loved it, always wanted to do it, didn't have the guts to tell mum and dad that's what I wanted to do. So I left school and went to uni, but I only lasted a year before I was back at drama school.
Yeah, that was your passion. That was your love, was the drama.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny acting, and I think for most actors probably, it's the fascination with the human condition, exploring the human condition, and the wonderful opportunity that acting, particularly theatre, can provide for you to sort of climb inside the skin of another person. It's a person of your making.
Yeah.
So I think one thing I've noticed about actors, and I certainly relate, is that they have naturally high built-in empathy. and they have also usually have naturally high built-in emotional intelligence is what we call it with in psychology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And I know you did some theatre work, which we'll talk about, but do you think as you've gone through theatre and different TV shows and movies, do you think it's a good thing for an upcoming actor to get into theatre first and learn the craft there?
Either or, I think. I think the benefit of getting into theatre is probably the main difference is the development of the vocal capacity. So if you go onto a set where you're mic'd up or there's a boom or whatever, you're unlikely to develop your vocal capacity so that you could reach the back of the theatre.
Yeah.
So probably having experience in the theatre helps young actors to develop that, and also to sort of titrate to learn what volume is required given whatever the circumstances. Because on film sets sometimes you need that,
Yeah.
you know, because there's a jackhammer in the background or whatever, and you've just got to shoot it. So you need to be able to modulate your voice quite a lot as an actor.
Yeah. Wow. And speaking of your parents, just before, what did they do for work when you were growing up?
So I grew up on a farm. Dad was a farmer. Mum was a stay-at-home mum.
Yep.
Yep. And then when we moved into town, Dad became an agent, a real estate agent, specializing or selling farms.
Oh, wow.
Finding people farms. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You're also a fully accredited member of the Australian Counsellors Association, trained in a number of evidence-based therapeutic models. What did you become a counsellor, or when did you become a counsellor, and what is it like to be a counsellor?
I started in private practice 2 years ago after I qualified. And it's absolutely wonderful being able to support people suffering with either mental health difficulties, from the minor, you know, the small T trauma to the big T trauma. It's incredibly rewarding and fulfilling. And yeah, I have no regrets whatsoever about taking this direction.
Wow.
Was it challenging during the pandemic with the work?
It was, and it's challenging setting up a small business anyway. In this day and age, you know, you need to have pretty, you know, intermediate technology skills. You need to understand business, understand how marketing works, understand how the internet works, all that sort of stuff. And that's pretty hard to keep up with, you know, because there's a lot of change. You know.
Daily. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
So my point of difference was going to be that I work online in telehealth. But of course, the pandemic changed all that and everybody had to go online. But I'm very happy with this as a medium. It works well for clients. And yeah.
So you said 2 years you became qualified. So was that just as a pandemic was starting or before the pandemic?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I became qualified in April 2020.
Wow. That would have been hard. I mean, I know there's a lot of businesses that grew out of the pandemic as well online.
Yeah.
And a lot closed down, but yeah, wow.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing how that experience, you know, globally and population wide has really shaken up the culture and the society all over the world.
Yeah.
So many changes and great things telehealth is one of them, I think, the great things. You know, it's just, I find it fantastic having a doctor's appointment over Zoom or over the phone without having to attend. And people in regional and rural areas, I think, will really take it up. That was actually my motivation in choosing to work in telehealth, was so that I could reach into communities where they don't have access to mental health support.
Yeah.
But of course, the paradox there is in a lot of those communities, of course, they don't have access to good mobile phone reception or to good internet connection either. So
yeah, it's interesting. I was actually just reading an article a few days ago about I think it was BetterHelp in the States. It's a new online portal for counsellors and clients, and they said that they're reaching a lot of those small towns in the US where there's no counsellors, and they're getting help online, and they can pick their counsellor, and it's all secure. And they said the business is just like growing so rapidly because of that. Yeah. And someone having to drive 200 kilometers just to see a counsellor because they live in a small town. So it's interesting that you mentioned that. So
yeah, very true.
Yeah.
And of course, the pandemic and the fallout of the pandemic and everything else that's going on in the world is, has had a sharp increase in people experiencing difficulty with their mental health. So, yeah, that's all going to need to change. There are big changes underfoot. One of the difficulties that we face as counsellors is our peak body, the Australian Counselling Association. They've been advocating for university educated counsellors to be added to the Medicare rebate scheme. And so far we haven't been.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's right. So that's probably, really, it's difficult in that we have to turn away a lot of people who say, can you give me the Medicare rebate? And we have to say, I'm sorry, we can't, which means that we can't actually cater as counsellors, and there's a lot of us, we can't actually help people at the lower socioeconomic spectrum, end of the spectrum. And, that's something we hope will change. It's difficult because it involves a lot of legislative change at a lot of different levels.
Yeah. Wow. And why does the government not do that? I'm curious to know.
I think my understanding of it, and I might be wrong, is the difficulty with constantly changing governments. So, anybody who works in an advocacy space will be able to tell you that that's a problem. They develop a good relationship with someone right up to ministerial level. And before any change can, that takes them 3 years. And before any change can happen, that person is out of government and the advocacy has to start again at the bottom.
Wow. How frustrating.
Yeah. But on your website, you do mention pay what you can afford counselling for actors and unemployed. And is it your way of giving back to an industry you care about? And do you have many actors that reach out to you for counselling?
Yeah, absolutely. It's my intention to give back to an industry I care about. No, I haven't had any actors attend yet. I do, however, at any one time have usually 2 people on my books who are attending on the basis of pay what you can afford. And that's partly based on my practice, my spiritual practice. And it's a concept known as dana. And dana is reciprocal giving in the spirit of generosity.
Wow.
Basically, that means paying what you can afford for a service rendered. And so I've worked with unemployed people or people who are artists on incredibly low incomes. But as yet, I haven't had any actors sit in front of me.
That's such an amazing thing to do. I mean, there's not many people in this day and age that are like that give back or, help people. Everyone's all about what's in it for me? What can I have? What can I get?
Thanks, Matt. But actually, I think there's a lot of people out there, and certainly a lot of younger people who are involved in social enterprise, which is that kind of thing, where a certain proportion of your income goes to a cause that you feel strongly about.
Yeah. Oh, wow, amazing. I'm curious, do you find it hard to switch off sometimes listening to other people's problems all day?
No, and you know what? I think it's my experience as an actor that really helps with that, because I do talk to fellow counsellors who have that problem. But as actors, and certainly having trained at VCA, we do a lot of work on de-rolling. So a lot of, I have a lot of experience in stepping into a role and out of a role at the end of the day. Wow. It's something that on a long running show like Prisoner is actually can become really difficult to do, because you spend more time being your character in a day, in 24 hours, than you do being yourself. Yeah. And so over time, you know, little bits of the character that you're playing sort of start to seep into your personality. When you do a stage play, I'm sure any actor will tell you that after the 2 months or whatever, where you've given 110% and you've formed really close, intimate relationships with other people, and then it ends, the season ends, however long the season is, there's a big down at the end. Yeah. And part of that down is, I think, certainly for me, after a long-running theatre show, for example, Midsummer Night's Dream in the Botanic Gardens in Melbourne, which ran for 6 months, there's this there can be this gap where you just kind of don't quite know who you are anymore, a little bit. So it sounds a bit weird, but yeah, and a bit of grieving, a little bit of grieving for the loss of the character that you inhabited for so long.
That's so interesting you said that. Charlie Hunnam, who was the main cast member on Sons of Anarchy, I saw an interview with him, and he said, yeah, parts of that character was seeping into his life. And when the show ended, he was actually really depressed, and he was grieving the loss of his character. He went to the set for a night and slept on the set just to grieve. Because he was so engrossed into the character. It's
yeah, absolutely. I think it's a common experience amongst actors, and so the process of de-rolling is extremely important psychologically for actors, to be able to delineate the difference between your character and yourself is hugely important. And it's the same with counselling. So over the years, you build skills for just dropping it. And I'm a practitioner of Vipassana meditation as well. And so that's what meditation is too. It's about noticing the thoughts or feelings and detaching, diffusing, dropping it, coming back to concentrating on something else. So I think all those skills that you build up over a lifetime have been helpful with this new career.
Yeah, fantastic. I find it fascinating. Meditation's great too. I love that. Favorite food? Do you have a food that you like to cook, or are you good in the kitchen? Signature?
Oh, you've got me there, Matt. I used to be a really good cook. I used to really love cooking and entertaining, but that all changed. And now that I live, alone with my dog, and during the pandemic, I'm afraid I've slid into really bad habits that involve frozen dinners. Okay. And I kind of like it. It takes 6 minutes to get dinner ready instead of 2.5 hours.
Yeah. They're quite easy, aren't they? I'll let you take my next question, Ken.
Oh, okay.
I'm hogging all the questions. I'm sorry.
Yes, I do, Matt. In 1983, you graduated from the Victorian College of Arts. What was it like graduating from VCA? And was there anyone else there who we may know now at your time at the VCA?
Oh, wow. Oh, that's a big question. I absolutely loved VCA, loved it. When I wanted to train, I chose VCA, specifically didn't bother to audition for NIDA. VCA specifically because of its philosophy, and the philosophy was, it was very much into creating your own work, working in collaborative environments where there's a lot of unconditional positive regard amongst people. And so we did, in our first year, we did things like juggling and clowning, and we'd had a little taste of everything in first year, and then they streamed us out into actors who were sort of more interested in stuff like Shakespeare, and actors who are more interested in stuff like music theatre or, whatever, stand up So yeah, I loved it. I loved every minute of the VCA. We had an absolutely brilliant teacher whom I still have enormous respect for, Lindy Davies.
Oh, Lindy. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the people that I attended, that I was streamed to and did the last 2 years, are still really dear to my heart. And in fact, I still have a photograph of those people on my dresser.
Oh, amazing.
From my 21st birthday party in the Melbourne Victorian Botanic Gardens.
A couple of years ago.
Yeah, just a couple of years ago. Thanks, Matt.
Oh, that's great. What was it like with Lindy? Lindy's, I mean, she's such an amazing actress.
Yeah, well, I absolutely loved working with Lindy. And interestingly enough, a lot of the stuff she brought into our acting training back there in the 80s is I had to revisit for my study into counselling.
Oh, wow.
So, for example, the concept of unconditional positive regard, which means accepting offers and that another actor gives you and not judging their performance, you know, all that sort of stuff, just being open and accepting and offering back reciprocal. That's all a part of counselling as well, or client-centred counselling based on the theories of Carl Rogers in the 1950s. And Lindy brought that to us as actors, young actors.
Wow, amazing. She was just in a movie I watched with my daughter a few weeks ago, Malcolm, which I love. I've seen it as a kid, but my daughter watched it and she loved it.
Beautiful film, beautiful film.
Yeah, great movie.
Can you tell the fans about your favourite TV shows?
Oh, wow. I've just finished binge watching The Split, which is a UK production aired on ABC iView. Absolutely loved it. Love Nicola Walker. I'm a huge fan of hers with all her weird mannerisms and all that sort of stuff. So relaxed in front of the camera. So I very much enjoyed The Split. This was the second or possibly third series.
Okay.
Way back when I loved The West Wing. Watched that like anything, like crazy, loved it. I'm really bad with names and place names and all of that, capital nouns. So I'm trying to think of a few. I should have written them down and been prepared. But yeah, and I find a lot of television has really changed a lot in the last decade, and you know, the quality of television, from the scripting to the acting to the direction to the cinematography, is just so fantastic. It's outstripped anything anyone was doing on TV, you know, a couple of decades ago. So it's yeah, I have to confess I do watch quite a bit of TV.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing now that you can just binge watch 10 episodes of one season in one night? I mean,
I love it. I love it.
Instead of waiting every week for the new episode to come out.
Yep. No, it's excellent.
Yeah.
Speaking of wonderful TV shows, this is partly a fan question from Nick Murray. You appeared on Return to Eden, created by Michael Lawrence, which starred some well-known prisoner cast members such as Peter Tupano, James Smiley, Wendy Playfair, and yourself. You played Sarah Harper. Did you have to audition for that role?
Yes, I've had to audition for every role I've ever done.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, never been offered. Oh, except for a couple of weeks ago when someone offered me a role on a short because the lead actress had got sick.
Story of your life.
They would have taken anyone. They would have taken my dog to do it. But no, I've never been offered a role that didn't require auditions.
You like auditions? So I know some actors hate auditions and some love them. Are you a fan?
Really? I didn't know there were any who loved them.
I've learned a few that have loved them and a lot that hate them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, obviously stage fright And that kind of, it's this, people experience it when they get up to do public speaking as well. So, yeah, so you need the skill to be able to turn that fear into excitement rather than fear.
Yeah.
And so I guess, auditions where I feel secure about knowing the lines can be really good fun, and you can improvise and play with it and play around and experiment with a character that hasn't been formed inside you yet. But where the lines, I've only just received them, or I'm not sure on them, that's terrifying. And it's hard to act because you're just thinking about what remembering the lines. Yeah.
Can you tell us what you felt and how it was being on Return to Eden?
Well, it was wonderful. It was Sydney for a start, so the weather was divine for a Melbourneite. Yeah. And fabulous locations and amazing costumes and all that stuff, all the sort of superfluous stuff. Of course, it was in the days of Dynasty in Dallas. Yeah. And so this was the long-running series, the 26-part series was Australia's sort of capitulating to that, the popularity and the big padded shoulders and the big hair. And so that was all great for a young, naive actress, not to mention the pay packet. The entire time I lived there, I survived off our per diems, and my actual wage was saved up, and I was able to buy a car at the end of it.
Wow. I mean, that show had a massive budget. It was $18 million in 81. I mean, that's huge for an Australian TV show.
Yeah, no expense was spared. I mean, Peter Cousins, who played my brother, he drove a Porsche. So, his character, drove a Porsche. Everything was the best of. It was a story about rich people. And so, we got to experience and play with pretending we were rich.
Amazing. I did read somewhere about the ending. The show wasn't rating towards the end, and they actually didn't even film the cliffhanger, the ending of the show. Was that right?
Yeah, well, my understanding of what happened, because I was, of course, young and green, and my understanding of what happened is actually that Michael Lawrence had written, which we all read, he'd written this very long 26-part series, which was brilliant. And they went to great lengths to recruit cast and crew who had a lot of experience in film, because they were filming it on film, not on television cameras. It was shot on film cameras. And but there was some sort of argument. We all moved from Melbourne, lots of us, to Sydney, but we had 3 weeks of rehearsals, which is unusual. But in the third week of rehearsal, they came and announced that Michael Lawrence had been sacked, or I forget what description they used, and that they were going to write the script as we went along, like on a long-running television show like Prisoner. And so what happened was the quality of the material disintegrated because they didn't have an end point to aim for so much. And so things like, the guy I married suddenly ended up being my half brother who was swapped at birth. And I think they had a few sort of script points where they realized they'd scripted themselves into a corner and had to, so if it lost viewers, that's possibly why.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah.
Wow. And it was also massive in Russia and France. It was one of the highest rating shows over there, believe it or not.
It was huge in France, and that's the only time I've ever had my own front cover of a magazine, which was Télé 7 jours, which means 7 days, a French publication. Yeah, for like TV Week.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
You still have a copy of that, or?
I've got a photo. Yeah, I've got a photocopy of it somewhere.
Oh, sensational. Now, in 99, you appeared in 7 episodes of Neighbours as Natalie Rigby. Now we know you had to audition, you mentioned, for every part. So who did you audition with in Neighbours, can we ask?
Oh, now you're going to ask me someone's name. Dan. I can't remember his name. Daniel.
No, I mean, who was the casting director?
Oh, Jan.
Yes.
Jan Russ, of course. The most beautiful casting director in the entire world.
Yeah. We just spoke to her a few weeks ago. Amazing.
Yeah, she's a lovely, lovely person.
Yeah. Now you were with Daniel McPherson. Now you got
Thank you.
Yes. What was it like working with Daniel?
Oh, he was great.
Yeah.
And it was quite a buzz to see him go on to achieve greater things in his career. I haven't seen him for a while, so I'm kind of guessing he probably went to the US or something. I don't know what happened to Dan. Yeah, went to the US.
Got on to big things. Yeah, definitely.
Good on him. Good on him.
Would you have liked to have stayed on Neighbours longer than the 7 episodes, or was that just you knew that you were only going on for 7 episodes?
Oh, no, I would have loved to have stayed on, actually. I never really, apart from Return to Eden, I never really got to experience staying for a very long time on a show. And it was just bad luck, you know, that never happened. I would have loved to have been a regular for a number of years.
Was how was Neighbours different to all the other TV shows that you'd have worked on?
Excuse me. Probably the main difference is that it's incredibly fast. You know, having to shoot when I was on it was only a week, or I think, or possibly 2 weeks till on air date. So, you know, they work incredibly fast with a 4-camera setup. You get a couple of rehearsals, a couple of takes, and then you have to move on. Yeah. So, that's probably the biggest, most amazing thing about Neighbours. Yeah.
Definitely. And what are your thoughts on the ending of it after 37 years?
I'm afraid I didn't watch it.
Yeah.
The ending. But the fact that it's ending, the fact of it ending is kind of, well, it's nice. Everything has to come to an end. And
that's true.
Yeah. I'm sure people will miss it, but something will pop up in its place, no doubt.
Definitely.
Can you tell us what theatre productions you've been in?
I can. Again, I probably can't without having my own bio written in front of me. But I've done everything from that, what I mentioned, The Dream in
Midsummer Night.
Excuse me, not The Dream, Romeo and Juliet in the Gardens, to little black box shows. They're probably my favourite in places like Theatre Works and everywhere except La Mama. I've never actually done a show myself at La Mama, which of course burnt down and has been reconstructed. So maybe one day I'll get to do a show at La Mama, but I love those kind of shoestring budget type of shows where everybody pitches in and maybe it's even just a black box with a table and a chair, and you're relying on the audience's imagination and your ability to invite the audience in to imagine to an imaginary space. I probably prefer those little shows to big production numbers.
And you mentioned so you mentioned the Botanical Gardens. I mean, how great is it watching a show in the Botanical Gardens? I took my daughter to see Wind in the Willows there a few years ago.
Wind in the Willows is beautiful.
It was amazing, just sitting there watching this production in the gardens. It was
Well, the guy who runs those productions in the gardens actually went through college with me. And the reason I misspoke before and called Romeo and Juliet The Dream is because his technique for cutting the hire down, if you like, the number of people you have to hire down so that people could double up on roles, that was developed on the Midsummer Night's Dream when we were in our 3rd year of college.
Oh, wow.
And we only had 6 actors, so we did the whole dream. We invited one professional actor as a guest to play Bottom, who was absolutely brilliant, Ross Williams. but so we all doubled up on roles, and that of course makes a Shakespearean production much more accessible and cost effective for a producer to mount if you don't have to hire 30 actors.
Wow.
So yeah, Glenn Elston took that technique that he learned at college and has mounted stage productions in the gardens for the last 30 years.
Yeah, they're absolutely brilliant. Love them.
Yeah.
You're also a voiceover artist. Do you enjoy it?
I love voiceovers. I love mucking around with the voice. I love studios. I love everything about being a voiceover artist and narrator. I was a book narrator for a while there. I've narrated a number of books. I still kind of do it in my practice because, excuse me, my practice as a counsellor involves little mini meditations, little mindfulness practices. So I can, that's the only place I get to practice my voiceover technique these days, is recording guided meditations for people.
Oh, wow.
Is there any work of yours that we would know that you can mention?
The counselling type work, you mean?
No, voiceover.
Oh, voiceover work. There's a lot of quite a number of books out there published by Belinda Books, an Australian company that produces audio books. They were sort of pioneers before Audible came along. Yep. Couldn't mention any by name except one for which I got an award, which is for young adults, called The Calling. And no, mostly what I used to do was kind of corporate videos, or that require the description of my voice used to be warm, authoritative. So corporate videos. When I was in London, they revoiced the Mind the Gap, and that was me for a while there. They discovered after a lot of research that a woman's voice is more helpful. The qualities in a woman's voice are more helpful for asking people to evacuate and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Which is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. People relate more to the female tone than to the male tone in instances of emergency.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, yeah. So it was kind of, just work, whatever work was out there. Yeah. I know my new idea ads, retail ads for radio and television when I was very young, and again, young and green, I was described as breathy. And that was because they were only a minute long, and they used to put 3 minutes worth of, text into a minute long, and you had to fall over yourself to get the words out. Like those guys at the end of political ads, say.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I find that interesting. Now, in 1992, you appeared in 21 episodes of a favourite show of mine, Cluedo, as Miss Scarlet. I love that show. It was so interesting at the time. I was just a kid, but seeing the studio audience trying to work out things. And it was hosted by, I think it was Ian McFadden. Yeah.
Ian McFadden, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's fantastic. What are your memories of that show?
Oh, it was so much fun. It was so much fun. Such a brilliant cast. Shot out at the old Crawfords. Just, a delight from beginning to end. And the improvisation component, that was new tech at the time. So we did that at Channel 9, and the audience had the ability to vote.
Yeah.
And that was all new tech in those days. And we were just a panel, in front, in character, in costume, in character, and we had to answer people's questions. We didn't know what questions were going to be asked. So that was really fun. The sort of the improvisation aspect of it all. I loved it.
Had some great prisoner cast on it. Joy Westmore, George Melody, and Belinda Davey, and Beverly Dunn as well. So it was.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, someone got murdered every week, so had the best guest cast come in. You know, we were the ensemble, but the standard of the guest cast who came in was just fantastic. And that's probably what made it so much fun, really, was the crazy storylines and the melodrama and all that.
I don't think that had ever been done in Australia before, having an audience, a live audience, voting people off a, you know.
That's right. Yeah. It was entirely new, a new concept. Ian used to go out at the start before, you know, once the audience had come in, and he'd explain how the tech worked and how they could vote, and they could ask any question they like. And people responded really well.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
At the time.
Now we come to Prisoner. You appeared in 9 episodes of Prisoner, 3 episodes in 1984 as Doris Cruickshank, and 6 episodes in 1986 as Lisa Mullins. How did you get the part of Doris Cruickshank, and had you ever auditioned for any other roles before this?
No, Doris, I had to audition for with the Yorkshire accent, and that was, you know, that was a very early. It was 1984, so it was my first year out of acting school.
Wow.
Yep. And I can't actually remember if it might have been my very first acting role. And I also had to audition for Lisa Mullins. That was after we shot Return to Eden. And to kind of shake off Return to Eden, I cut all my hair off and dyed it blonde. And
so you did it yourself. It wasn't.
I did it myself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And yes, so that's, you know, that sort of probably helped with the role. And it was just devastating to have that cut short by illness. We'd done a couple of, we did a whole storyline where the prisoners revolted, and we covered ourselves in mud so that we wouldn't be recognized. So in order to shoot that, the actors had to stay covered in mud all day, and makeup had to spray us down so that the mud stayed wet, didn't crack and fall off. And it was shot in Melbourne in the middle of winter. And inside the Channel 10 studios, because they have big lights and everything, was always air conditioned to really, it was like being in a refrigerator. So I got pneumonia. I got really, really, really sick as a result of doing that. You know, I'd always had a sort of dicey chest, and they didn't have time. I got so sick so quickly that I couldn't even drag myself through, you know, acting when you're sick, which a lot of us do.
Yeah.
I was too sick. And so there was no time for them to change the script storyline for my character, which is how come I ended up sticking my head in a basin, my blonde hair in a basin with a basin full of dye, and pulling my head out a completely different actress. Yeah.
Wow. And pneumonia is not I mean, I had that back in 2017, and it's awful. I mean,
it's not fun. No, it's not fun.
It's like your ribs are being crushed. I mean, it's...
Yeah, you're really, really sick.
Wow. What was it like working with Nigel Bradshaw at the time when you were playing Doris?
It was fantastic. He was great. Yeah, very supportive. Good role to play.
You were on the show in 1984 and 1986. Did you notice a difference on set coming back in 86?
86, I got more of a, because I was cast as regular cast, I probably got more of a taste of it, of what it was like. You know, the first role as Doris Cruickshank, everything was so new, and I'd never been on a set before. And, you know, I don't really remember much about that, but so I can't tell you if there was a huge difference.
That's okay. Was it I know a lot of cast that we've spoken to said it was a show they couldn't wait to get on at the time, and they were so glad they got parts. Was it like that for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it was a bit of a badge of honor to get a role on Prisoner, because the characters, almost all of them, you know, and the storylines was so far removed from what a normal person might experience, or what a, you know, normal middle class person might experience. And so they were challenging roles, challenging scripts, challenging conditions. They had great directors come through.
Great cameraman.
It was, yep, great cameraman, Ken. Yeah, how long were you on it, Ken?
From the beginning to the end.
You're kidding. And how long was that, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, it was 692 episodes, but I probably did about 600. I suppose I took time off for long service and various other things, illness.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I was there from day one.
Wow. So Prisoner shot very fast too, didn't it? But I don't remember there being 4 cameras.
There were 3 cameras. Occasionally we would use a 4th. We did get 4 cameramen on the show just to give us a break. So we revolved around a little bit and we got breaks that way. As you know, it was long days and very fast. And occasionally we used a film dolly in the studios as well. So that needed a couple of extra guys to crew that. But yes, they were very fast, long days.
Yeah, yeah.
And you as cast had to empty out everything in your head from the previous scene to pick back up again on the next scene. And it must have been quite horrendous to remember everything that you had to do.
Yeah, in fact, I have to say that's one of the big things that's different about those fast-moving series is the juggling, not shooting in order. I recently had an experience of shooting a film for a whole day, a little short 10-minute film for a buddy who's a film school graduate. And it was just amazing shooting the whole day in order of the script. It was so
in order. Well,
because you could build your performance. And I was playing someone who got really, really drunk too. So that helped. But that's definitely a skill that you really can only learn by doing it. And that is to jump between, to plot your acting performance, if you like, and the whole, development of the script, jumping back and forth from the end to the beginning, to the middle, to yesterday, tomorrow, all that stuff. That's very challenging for an actor.
Yeah, and I mean, us as fans that don't see any of that, we just see it all in order. We don't realize that, you maybe did that really emotional scene, and then you've gone back to the happy scene and you've had to go back to the emotional. I mean, I don't know how you can do it.
Yeah, it's like acrobatics for actors.
And that we've probably already covered the next.
We have, yes, about Jan Russ. So we will move on to now. Did you get a character breakdown of Lisa when you took the part on? Did you know what the part was, the character was?
I'm sure I would have got a character breakdown. Again, when I worked recently, I was surprised that after getting the script, there were no character breakdowns supplied. That was new on me. So I don't think in my career when I was working, making a living from acting, that I ever got an audition or a script that didn't have a full character breakdown written by a writer.
Yeah.
Rather than that the character breakdowns are so useful because it gives you a guide as to what the casting agent, for example, is looking for. So on the few, I remember one terrible audition I did for the ABC, and they described the character in a way that I interpreted her as being kind of a ditzy blonde. And she was a homecoming queen and she was an aerobics instructor and she had enormously long pink fingernails and this, that, and the other. And I went into the ABC and did this audition. I played this ditzy blonde and the casting director was just open-mouthed in horror at what I'd done. And I said, what's the problem? And she said, I had an image in my mind of a kind of an earth mother. and So then I had to do it again. I had to try and do it, with give my Earth Mother version of the Ditzy Blonde, and it was a disaster. Needless to say, I didn't get the part.
So character breakdowns are important.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
When you started on Prisoner, who were you looking forward to working with?
Oh, I think I just, I'm really hooked on collaborative working. I love it. So I wanted to meet everyone. Sheila was probably my favorite, and I think she was probably everybody's favorite in the green room. And Sheila had all the young actors were like little chickens under her wing, and it was such a shock to see her in the green room, because as Lizzie, she had this broad Australian accent, and of course in the green room she spoke like the British actor that she was, that was trained in received pronunciation. So the difference between Lizzie and Sheila was enormous, but it was great to meet everybody, work with everybody. Yeah,
that's funny about Sheila. I saw an interview a few years ago, and when she was doing I'm like, I had no idea.
yeah. And the other weird connection is that her son, Peter Oyston, was our dean at the VCA.
Oh, really?
So he was a director and dean of acting schools. Yeah, and also a wonderful man. Yeah, wow. A lot of respect for both of them.
Yeah, definitely. Now, when you were on the show, Greg Evans did a cameo on the show. Do you remember that day?
Sorry, no. Don't remember it.
No, that's okay.
Just don't remember it.
Did you know anyone already before starting filming?
So I knew Mari Trevor, the producer, and Peppy Trevor, her daughter. Peppy went to VCA with me. And I can't even remember if Peppy and I were ever in any scenes together on Prisoner. It's a long time ago.
She was leaving just as you were coming on. I think her last episode, and then you were on the next one from memory.
Okay.
Yeah,
you'd know better than I would, Matt.
I don't know at all. No, just I go back and watch some episodes before I do interviews, and yeah.
Oh, good on you.
Yeah. So you knew Mari, because we actually just had Peppy on just recently, and
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, Peppy was at it's a long story. I won't bore you with the whole thing, but yeah, Peppy was in my year at VCA.
Wow.
And I didn't know anyone. I was kind of an orphan, age 17. I was very young. I was a lot younger than everybody else that they accepted into VCA. And Peppy, yeah, I ended up sharing a house with her for a while, her and her partner. And Mari used to have us round, the young kids around for Sunday lunch. She'd cook a roast or something, or a casserole. And she really looked after us when we were students. And she was already at that stage, a producer of Prisoner. So,
wow. Yeah, it was interesting when we spoke to Peppy, and she said that her mum was one of the first directors in Australia as well, and one of the shows going way back. And yeah, Peppy's absolutely amazing. A lot of love for her.
Yeah. Peppy's fantastic. She's like a little dynamo. I don't know if she's still like that, but she was then.
Yeah, no, she's great. She's actually coming to the event that we're having in August. She's going to be there, so it's great.
Good one.
Now, you first appeared in episode 651, which was a great episode. You're in the house, and you got the cops in there. You throw a vase at them, and it's all happening. What was it like, that first was that your first scenes that you shot on Prisoner from memory?
I'm not sure if that was on day one, but I think any actor will, ask them, they'll love it. The more dramatic the scene, I saw in the Split, binge watching the Split the other night, and she came in exploding, and we knew that she was, holding it all together. And she did that thing that you see so often where she cleared everything off the desk, you know. And then I was expecting her to upend the desk, which she didn't do. But, you know, actors love doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you played the part so well. And it means you're there with the cops and you're sitting back. I'm not answering questions, and you were really great.
Can you tell us, do you have a technique for learning lines?
I suppose I probably do, but basically it's rote. Just repetition, 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 same as your 12 times tables. I know at one point, I can't remember which show, it might have been Cluedo, I experimented with taping the respondents' lines, recording the other characters' lines, and then learning by filling the gaps. But that wasn't so good, because then you get sort of into a pattern of how long it takes between, you know, your response and the other person's response. So yeah, I just prefer to sit there and read it 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 and read it. So slowly it comes into your mind, the thoughts of the words come into your mind, and then eventually you get a muscle memory. So for something like theatre, Shakespeare, that's where muscle memory plays a great deal. So if you forget a line, your lips are the first thing to kind of go, hang on a minute, something's not right here. My body isn't doing, I've forgotten something, I've taken the wrong direction because that feels really unfamiliar. What have I done?
Yeah.
Because if you're doing a show where you've got this, like a theatre show where you've got the same lines every night, making them fresh and having a fresh experience yourself is the biggest challenge. And it can, you know, you can get to a point where if you're not careful, you kind of tune out a little bit, and it's just like reciting the shopping list, you know, and you get lost, your concentration goes. So that's what you have to avoid, and that's where muscle memory becomes very powerful. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. Now, your induction into Wentworth in the prison was with a character called Wendy Glover, who was played by Julianne Newbold, who, of course, is married to Prime Minister Keating now. Do you have any
I didn't know that either. No, I kind of missed out on Prime Minister Keating because I lived in London those years.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, no, she's married to him now.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you remember those scenes with Julianne, or?
Don't specifically remember the scenes, but I remember her.
Yeah. Wow, amazing.
Would you have liked to have stayed on Prisoner longer than you did? And we know why you left, but and did you talk to Terry Waddell when she had to take the part over?
I only got to speak to Terry afterwards. Because of my illness and everything, and because of the big scramble to get her into the role. And I think it's absolutely amazing that she was able to do it at such short notice and with such professionalism and skill. As I said before, it was very disappointing not to be able to stay and get to experience being a regular cast member for a long time.
Yeah. I always ask this question because I say life is like that movie, Sliding Doors. Do you think if you stayed on longer, your career might have gone in a different direction, or you would have, become?
Yeah, totally. Totally sliding doors, isn't it? The things that happen to us that, you become completely derailed, and where you thought you were going to be, you're not, and all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, undoubtedly, if I hadn't got pneumonia and had stayed on that set, a lot of things would have been different. Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it? What part would you say you're recognised for the most out of your career? Do you still get recognised out in public, or?
I do get recognised in public. The most common, there are two most common are Miss Scarlett from Cluedo, and Sarah from Return to Eden, despite the fact that I had blonde, they permed my hair and dyed it blonde. But I think it's the face. People remember the face. A lot of people nowadays just go, don't I know you? Did I go to primary school with you? And I thought that was because I was an actor. But when I moved to Europe for 5 years, I discovered that the same thing happened there a lot. So I think it must just be that I have a kind of archetypal face of some kind. And once I remember in the Paris metro, I actually saw my doppelganger. It was bizarre because in a lot of, they have the really steep escalators going up and down. And in a lot of stations, they have mirrors on the side of the escalators. And I was going up and I thought I had this moment where I thought I had some mirror strange trick had happened with mirrors, because I saw myself coming down and kind of went, I think I'm going mad. And then realized that no, it was an actual person. And she was concentrating on looking down, and I saw her and I followed her as she went all the way down. But man, it could have been me.
Wow.
Fair income. It was an absolute doppelganger. Yeah.
That would have been freaky.
Yeah, it was totally weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did she have the dimples?
Oh, she must have, I think, in order for me to have thought I'd caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror.
That's
Are
amazing.
you actually surprised how popular Prisoner is still to this very day, and that we are talking about 40 years later?
Totally surprised, totally surprised. I got a shock when I went to London and realized how huge and popular both Neighbours and Prisoner of Cell Block H were. And, it was kind of it was a bit like Doctor Who or Rocky Horror Show. The fans really got into the swing of things and really got into the parts and playing the parts and remembering the storylines and all that sort of stuff. So I'm really thrilled that it's happening here. It's really nice to be here and to be interviewed and remembering the past, and I think it's great. It's great.
I was looking at our YouTube channel analytics a few weeks ago, and the countries, it's amazing where we've got viewers from. It's, there's Canada, Japan, Greece, UK, Australia, New Zealand. It's just like all over. People coming to the channel to watch these interviews. It's amazing.
Wow, that's great, man. It's a good thing you're doing. Both of you.
Now, before we get on to Ken with the fan questions, did you ever watch Wentworth by any chance? The reincarnation of Prisoner.
I watched a couple of eps, and I loved it. I thought what I saw was just so good. And my recollection of Prisoner, maybe it's just because I did it, was that it wasn't nearly so deadly serious as Wentworth. Wentworth was much more gritty, much darker, maybe because of just the changing times. There's pretty dark times that we live in.
Definitely.
Now, speaking of different countries, this is a fan question from Coventry, England, from Jay Shaw, who says, "Hi, Nicki, who has been your favourite person or people you've acted alongside, and why?"
I'm going to name Geoffrey Rush. And this is a bit weird, but I still remember it. Geoffrey Rush was acting opposite Geoffrey Rush at my school when he was in a theatre and education troupe as a young man. Wow. Was probably what tipped me into desperately wanting to be an actor, because it was such a positive experience. Because there was no condescension to this little 17-year-old actress. He totally and absolutely gave me his belief, his unconditional positive regard, as I mentioned before. And there were fireworks because of that, because of working with him. Because for me, acting isn't just about what I'm doing, it's about what happens between us. That's really where the drama happens.
Yeah.
And that little experience of being up on stage at my school with Jeff Rush I still remember it to this day. He was such an inspiration. And I sat next to him. There goes your dog. I sat next to him on a plane and had the opportunity to tell him that story and thank him very much for the influence he'd had on my life. And I'm sure that it's nice to get that kind of feedback.
Yeah, what an amazing guy. Wow.
Yeah, I'm so pleased that he went on to have the success that he so deserves, because he was always a brilliant actor and worked in theatre for many, many years before a film director had enough faith in him to, turn down years of investment because he wanted Jeffrey to play the lead role in Rush, in Shine.
Wow, amazing story. Bonnie Davis Shacko said, "Oh wow, both Lisas." We've actually had Terry Waddell on. A fan suggested that we should have had you on first and then phase you out and bring Terry on at the same time. I thought that was funny. Did you watch Prisoner after you'd left? I hope all is well with you. That's from Bonnie.
I occasionally watched it. When I was a young actor, I found I didn't like watching myself back, didn't like watching rushes and stuff. You kind of have to do it, I think. But I watched it a little bit, but I'm not a crazy fan like some people out there.
Yeah, like me. No.
I know someone. He's also interviewing you.
No, I'm not crazy, I promise.
Martin James B says, and I'd echo his thoughts. How was it doing that all authentic British Yorkshire accent when you played Doris? And I'd like you to break into it now.
Oh, you can't spring that one on me. No. For a start, I can't quite remember the difference between Wales and Yorkshire. But at the time, the only thing available to me was as BBC accent tapes. And so I listened to the Yorkshire accent over and over and over and over again, and then, had it ready to go for the audition. Later, of course, after I lived in England, I became fascinated with the number of regional accents they have. And I was quite proficient at a number of them by the time I came back, and did swap accents quite a bit in book narrations. But nowadays, I think most sets have a dialect coach, which we didn't have in those days. So it was a bit of fun. And, I was young and naive enough to think that I could get away with it, not realizing that, it's like watching Americans try to do an Australian accent. It's like, whoa, no, good attempt, but.
Were you more nervous with the audition because you had that on top of doing just a normal audition plus an accent as well?
Probably, Matt. That would make a lot of sense. Yeah, probably.
Wow. Carl Buckle also said, I watched Return to Eden for the first time last year. Thought it was great, and I remember Nicki in that. Just a comment from a fan there.
Thank you.
I've got one from Robert Ivory. In the Behind the Bars book, you mentioned you didn't have the best time of it playing Lisa, and there were bullies. Can you give more insight, or can you give us anything about that?
Yeah, I actually replied to that question on Facebook with no names, no pack drill. and I realized in hindsight, again, giving interviews to journalists and people, I was naive enough to just, tell them what I thought. And it takes, that's the sort of training that they need to include in actor training in future, is to how to manage PR and marketing and all that sort of stuff, because you can really stick your foot in it. I've done it a few times when I was younger, including telling someone interviewing me in Queensland how much I hated Queensland. So yeah, you can be pretty naive. I think you can be naive for your whole life, really, can't you? But yeah, that gets back to the de-rolling that we were talking about earlier. So leaving scenes and going into the green room, you know, people during the working day can just sort of stay in character. And so that's what results in some weird dynamics behind the scenes.
Yeah. And I mean, it'd be like any workplace, you know, work in a hospital, law firm, you know.
Absolutely.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. Bullying is everywhere.
Yeah. It's not just a TV show. And I'm sure the fans want to hear who it was, but we will not be discussing that.
They'll have to guess.
Yeah, or read the book. I haven't even read that book. Zantoni Banner said, I loved you in Return to Eden. Was there any talk of it returning at the time?
No, not that I recall. I think in those days, I don't know. The actors wouldn't have been privy to any of those kind of discussions, and probably the fact of it turning out differently from the way it was intended, as in shooting a signed, sealed and delivered thing that was written by Michael Lawrence. I don't know. I don't know if there was talk of it going ahead or not. Certainly not such that we were hanging on, hoping that it might happen. Yeah.
Well, that is all the questions, unless you've got anything else to add, Ken.
Yes, I actually have a couple of things. One, I'm always been seen to be drinking water, but this time I've been drinking out of this cup, and I can assure you inside it is milk.
Wow.
It's milk and cookies.
The other thing that I wanted to say to you, Nicki, was you mentioned when you were doing voiceovers, you were known as being breathy at times. Well, I think Marilyn Monroe was breathy a lot of times too. So
that reminds me of a story, Ken, and it's just kind of a funny story of someone, a voiceover engineer, asked me in to record a meditation tape, relaxation. It was not meditation, relaxation tape. He kept asking me to make little changes to my voice and stuff. And in the end, he said, look, I don't think this is going to work, Nicki, because you sound like something off a porn video. And not having watched many porn videos, I didn't know where to go with that. But that's the breathy Marilyn Monroe thing, maybe.
You wouldn't know whether to take that as a compliment or a bag.
Exactly.
That's hilarious. I'll wrap up. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you come on and learn about your life and career. You're an amazing actress and love.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, both of you. It's been wonderful.
Fans will love it. That was episode 46 of Talking Prisoner. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and please also share these videos where you can, and also like our Facebook, Instagram and Twitter pages. And this episode of Talking Prisoner will be available on all the podcast platforms, including iHeartRadio, Google, Amazon, Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts, and the talkingprisoner.com website. Thank you so much, Nicki.
Thank you, everybody. Be kind to yourselves.